In Rise of Kingdoms, there are some commanders that are part of the PvP meta. They are some of the best commanders in the game, the cream of the crop, and you absolutely should not invest in those commanders. So today we're going to talk about how could it possibly be the case that some commanders are some of the best that you just should not be spending your legendary commander sculptures on. But first, what's going on, guys? Cheers. Now, as you guys know, I am a partnered creator with Rise of Kingdoms, so if you want more Rise of Kingdoms content, make sure you subscribe down below and click the thumbs up button. Now, the topic of today's video actually was spawned from the comments section on a video that I made recently covering some commanders that I thought maybe might not be a great investment in Rise of Kingdoms, and a vast majority of you guys watching understood the concept of that video, but some people were clearly very confused. They looked at the list and said, I'm getting great reports with commanders like Nevsky and William Wallace, and so why on earth would they be on this list? Omniarch, you're crazy, you have no idea what you're talking about, what is going on here, right? And that led me to realize that maybe some people just have no idea how to invest in commanders in Rise of Kingdoms. And so today we're going to talk about why some of these commanders, like Nevsky for example, can perform really well on the battlefield and yet should not be invested in right now in 2025. And the reason for that is actually something that I alluded to in another recent video where I covered all the different events that give you legendary commander sculptures. And if you go back and check out that video, you'll realize that a vast majority of your sculptures come from VIP 14 and above. That gives you 3 sculptures per day. The rest of your sculpture economy is probably going to come from things like Ark of Osiris, things like the Korok ceremony, the 7k gems event, and various other events, right? Those are some of the big ones that I can think of off the top of my head that just give you a ton of sculptures, and they're pretty reliable. They come around a lot, and as long as you're doing them all the time, you're logging in every day, you're going to have a decent sculpture economy. But if you are a free to play player or a low spender, there's a good chance that it's going to be a grind to save up enough sculptures to expertise a single legendary commander. In fact, I've gotten comments from players saying that they can only expertise a pair of commanders in a year, right? So 2 legendaries per year in Rise of Kingdoms. Now, I know some of the older free-to-play players and free-to-play players that grind a ton, like maybe they can expertise a couple of more commanders per year, maybe 3, maybe 4, right? Depending on how long you've been saving and things like that. But my point is that if you are a free-to-play player and a low spender, and even some mid to high spenders start to run out of sculptures, right? Like let's be real here. Sculptures are not that easy to come by unless you're some sort of like giga whale or actually wait, no, don't look at that. I've been saving for a while, I promise. Anyway, my point is, and I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, you guys know this, right? Like these sculptures are hard to get, right? Okay, all right, so we know that, let's say that a free-to-play player can get 2 or 3 legendary commanders per year, right? Okay, so if you want to catch up to the meta, then those commanders that you invest in have to stay meta for more than a year, right? Ideally, they would stay meta for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, maybe, if you're lucky, right? That's the only way to get ahead of the meta and make sure that you constantly have the best of the best. And so there have been commanders historically that fit the bill here, that are just really good, and they've been really good for a long time, and people have been able to get tremendous amount of value out of them. So for example, we have commanders like Joan of Arc Prime, great value. Alexander the Great, he had some dark days there, but I would say overall he's gotten some great value. We have commanders like Nevsky, CPO Prime. These are commanders. Guan Yu was one of them for sure. Same thing with William. These are commanders, oh my god, YSG, right? These are commanders that were meta for so long, years and years and years, to the point where people are still in my current KVK in Kingsland with some crazy powerful players. I'm still seeing Guan Yu, right? And that just goes to show how good of a commander he was when he first came out back in the day. And so my point is here that the goal of investing in commanders is to catch the latest greatest thing that will have the highest probability of staying meta for the longest period of time. And so if we look at a commander like Nevsky, for example, he's great, right? I've used him in this KVK. I've gotten over 1.5 million kills with him, which isn't that much compared to my other commanders, and I have since benched him. Okay, I'll be fully transparent, and I'll make a video about that in the future. We're going to go over all the commanders that I used in this KVK, because this was my best performing KVK as far as I can tell. I'll have to see the final stats, but we're going to go over all that, so if you don't want to miss it, subscribe down below. But I tried to use Nevsky this KVK, and he was fine. He was all right. Like he wasn't horrible, he wasn't great, he was fine, and you can still make him work, right? Like his damage factor is low, but it's not horrible. His debuff is good. It's only one target, but it is good. It really helps you melt down that one target, and his stat spread is actually still great. I actually really like his stat spread, his skill damage, and his march speed. Like everything about him is solid, right? But he's old. Let's just be real. Like if you compare this 2300 single target damage factor to anything that's come out in the last year or two, it's way lower, right? It's not even close. It's way lower. Look at Liu Che. Liu Che's not even new. He hits basically the same amount to 5 targets, bro. Way better. We look at commanders like Ragnar when he's expertise, he hits 3 targets for effectively 2800. Way better, right? I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here, but Zhuge Liang, Huo just hits 1 target but hits harder, right? He hits harder. Arthur hits way harder and 3 targets. Like almost all commanders that have come out after Nevsky hit harder than Nevsky, right? And so the point is that it's not that Nevsky himself is bad, and it's not that Nevsky can't do well right now, but the power creep is kicking in like it always has and like it always will, right? One day we're gonna look back at Liu Che in the same vein, and I know you're thinking I'm crazy, right? I know you are, but like look, I've been here since the game launched virtually, right? I joined the game like a month after it came out, not even, okay? And I've seen this cycle over and over and over again, right? People always used to talk about how good YSG was, and now you see not that many of him on the battlefield. Not to say he's bad, but like you just don't see him that much anymore. People used to use Saladin all the time in the open field. You don't see him anymore, and that's just the cycle of power creep, right? And it happens to everybody. And so at some point we're gonna bench Joan, at some point we're gonna bench Huo, right? Like these are almost inevitabilities in a game like Rise of Kingdoms, right? And like that's okay, right? Like that's okay. Like as newer and better things come into the game, as the developers experiment with new things and they try out new things. I mean, look at like, for as much criticism as Shajar gets for her kit, it's still unique, it's different, and I like that. I like that the devs are trying new things. Now we have combo damage, right? And like I'm excited about that, right? And so there's a good that comes from power creep, but the downside is that your old stuff starts to get worse, right? And so in that way, you can have a commander like Nevsky or a commander like William Wallace, for example, who's a bit newer, admittedly, that just aren't necessarily commanders that you may want to invest in right now. And like, look, I'm not saying William Wallace and Nevsky are in the same bucket. I think that Wallace has a slightly higher chance of being used in the future because he's smite, and we don't have that many smite commanders still. So, you know, there's a good chance that that could be the thing, especially because we also see this new formation is coming, the pincer formation. Obviously more smite support is coming. Okay, so in a world where we see the game is shifting more and more away from skill damage, right? And the commanders that are already in the game with skill damage deal more skill damage than Nevsky. Why would I make a video telling people to invest in Nevsky when he's already over 3 years old? Okay, he's by every measurement power crept, right? Like that's not even my opinion. Like guys, come on, these are numbers, right? Like just look at the numbers. It is what it is, right? And again, not saying he's bad, but he just objectively his numbers are lower. Like it is what it is, right? And knowing all of that on top of the fact that it's going to take a free-to-play player 6 months to expertise a new legendary, and that's with them logging in every day, grinding, doing all the events, working really hard, right? And then they watch an Omniarch video and he says, hey, Nevsky's great, invest in Nevsky in 2025. And then the next cav release is another combo commander, and Nevsky gets put farther and farther and farther down the bench, and then they're sitting there wondering why they ever invested in Nevsky, and it's because everyone said he's great. And that's true, he is great, but when you're making investments in Rise of Kingdoms, you have to be thinking like a year out, right? Minimum a year out. You should be thinking, okay, is this commander going to be just as good or at least usable 1 year from now? That's why commanders for me like Ragnar and commanders like Arthur were no-brainer investments for me, right? Because I could not see a world where I'm not running Ragnar CPO at least for a year, right? It was a no-brainer to me because these are double AoE commanders. The skill damage is insane, the stat distribution is great. It's a little slower than the Guan CPO, but at the end of the day it hits so hard. It's a great march. It's a great march. And so it was an instant max for me. There was no question, right? I knew that this commander was going to last. Now I could be wrong, right? Like like I just got him, right? So I mean, we still, I could be proven wrong, but like that was an investment I was willing to make. And truthfully, for me, I've got a lot of legendary commander sculptures, right? I was able to save a lot of those commander sculptures because of the commander swap event, which was very, very nice. Maybe I will bench my Ragnar with the next infantry release. Who knows, right? Like maybe they'll just pair super well with CPO, or maybe they'll pair super well with Philip, and I'm gonna run Liu Che Alex with the next infantry commander in Philip, and it's just gonna be god tier goated, right? Maybe, and then I just won't even run my CPO, right? Like there's always gonna be this degree of uncertainty with commander investments, but the goal is to try to identify commanders that have unique attributes and that are clearly a slight cut above the rest, right? And so a better example would be Arthur, right? Arthur is just like obviously better. His skill, even if you only look at his skill damage alone, 2800 to 3 targets. You look at commanders like Joan, 2000 to 3 targets. Like it's clearly stronger, right? Now Joan's got more stuff going on the active skill in the form of buffing, but like when we're talking point for point, he's got double the amount of health that Joan has. He has 50% more attack than Joan has, right? We have 20% and here we have 30%, and on top of all of that, he has a rage debuff and he gets 30% skill damage bonus, whereas Joan does not. So to me, Arthur was a clear cut above the rest. I mean, they even made a cinematic for him, right? Like that should be a tell. That should be an obvious that, like, okay, like yeah, the devs are basically committing, if they're gonna go out of their way to make a cinematic for a commander, that's probably a good sign that like they've got something big planned for him, right? And also it's freaking Arthur. Like what are we talking about? And that's not to mention that sometimes you might not have a great set of gear for a new commander investment, right? Like you may see a commander like Ragnar come out and you're like, oh well, maybe I could run another infantry march, right? Like maybe you've been running 1 infantry, 1 cavalry, and 1 archer, and maybe one you know, ranged, or maybe you don't have archers yet, you went ranged instead because you heard it was really good, or whatever the case might be, right? And you're thinking like, okay, well, like maybe I want to run a 2nd infantry set and I'll grab Ragnar CPO, right? And that'll be my 2nd infantry set, and that could be true, and they could be meta, and you might have the sculptures for that, and they might even last a year. But if you don't have the gear for it, if you can't put decent gear on that army, well, maybe you don't want to invest in that commander, right? Because you invest in that commander and then you throw a purple set of gear on it and it performs okay, and then you spend the next 6 months slightly improving that set of gear and improving it, and then all of a sudden a new infantry commander comes out by the time you have great gear for it, and it's like, well, wait a minute, now that you have good gear and good armaments, by the way, you can't not have armaments, right? So by the time you get good gear and good armaments, or fieldable decent, you know, gear and armaments, you might as well have not even invested in that commander, because now there might be something better, right? And so that's where tremendous amount of restraint and patience comes into play here, where the best way to invest in commanders is literally to do what I'm doing right now: save up hundreds of legendary commander sculptures and only invest in a commander if they meet all of the criteria, right? Can you field that commander with decent gear and decent armaments? Do you already have a good pair for that commander right now? Is that commander clearly better than everything else that's in the meta? And is there something about them that will keep them relevant for at least a year, if not longer, right? Like these are all the things that you have to be thinking about. And if the answer to any of those questions is no, there's a good chance you should not be investing in that commander, even if they're meta right now, right now, like undoubtedly. And so hopefully this video kind of helps you guys sort of understand why, you know, my sort of job, I don't like to call that, because like what I do here is a blessing, right? Like, and I'm tremendously grateful for those of you that decide to tune in and watch what I have to say about a mobile game, right? Like it's crazy, and I'm super thankful, so genuinely, like, thank you. But my quote unquote job, okay, here on YouTube is to try to give you guys the best advice possible. And when it comes to strategy games like Rise of Kingdoms, where you have such rare currencies like legendary commander sculptures, I can't just make a video and say, hey, here's all the commanders that I'm using right now, go ahead and grab them, right? Because, you know, just because I'm messing around with testing out Nevsky, or I'm testing out running like a Joan William just to see how that does, right? Like that doesn't mean that you should get them, right? So my sort of job, right, memeable job, is to think like, okay, a year out, if I told a free-to-play player today to invest in this commander, would I regret telling them to do that in 1 year, right? Because I do take it seriously, because I know how hard you guys have to work to like get these legendary commander sculptures, and so I kind of bear that burden of like making sure that I really give you guys the best advice possible. And like people were joking in my video recently like, oh well, he put all the sock commanders on that list, who am I supposed to invest in, right? Well, okay, I'll answer your question. I think Liu Che is a safe investment. I think Arthur is a safe investment. I think Zhuge Liang is probably a safe investment. Those three are like the single best commanders of each troop type in the game right now. I still think Ragnar and Scipio are decent investments, not S tier, but decent investments. I think Joan is still a decent investment. I threw her in 50-50 at the end of that video, and I do sort of stand by that, but at the end of the day, I think there's a good chance she might outlast commanders like Huo. Possibly. I mean, if you want to know why I watched that video, I'm not going to get into it now, but there's still plenty of commanders that you can invest in right now. Like I think Herman is still solid, right? I know that there's an argument to be made that the value of poison goes down as we get fewer and fewer skill damage commanders, which seems to be the case, by the way. But even with that being said, he still gives you decent stats, decent march speed. He has a defense reduction, an AoE skill damage bonus, and he himself has a half circle 2000 damage factor AoE, which is solid, right? And pair that with Zhuge Liang and you've got one of my best marches, even though I only run one archer march, right? So there's still commanders that are safe to invest in right now, but just always keep that in the back of your mind, right? Is the investment that you're making today something that's going to last longer than it takes for you to recoup those sculptures through events, through KVKs, through VIP and all this other stuff, right? That was the point of my recent video talking about not investing in some of these commanders, even though I've seen people get great reports with commanders like William and commanders like Nevsky. And just as a quick reminder, if you are a spender here in Rise of Kingdoms and you spend a few $100s every single year on this game, whether it's just buying the pop-ups for Crystal Tech or every couple of holiday events you max purchase the bundle or something along those lines, it might not seem like much, but when you do that for long enough and you find yourself in the Season of Conquest, you're probably in the top 10% of the game. So just always try to remember that these videos are for everyone, and so I have to give the best advice to the most amount of people, not just the top 10%. Anyway, with all that being said, hopefully you guys found this video helpful or informative, and if you did, make sure you drop a thumbs up down below. It helps out the channel a ton, and you might think that you're subscribed but you're actually not. Just go ahead and double check down there. It's free, it's fast, it's easy, it takes 1 second, and if you ever stop playing this game for whatever reason, you can always unsub later. It don't hurt nobody. Comment down below your thoughts on everything that we talked about in this video. Does this clarify things as to why I might tell you not to invest in a meta commander? Let me know down below. And with that being said, guys, thank you so much for watching. This has been Omniarch. I will talk to you guys again soon. Peace.